Hello, New York Giants fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Valentine's Views podcast here on Big Blue View Radio. Please like, share, and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube, and please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts across the Big Blue View Radio network. All right, the Giants have reached what basically passes as the quarter pole of a 17-game season. Giants are 1-3, and what I thought we would do today is more or less assess the state of the Giants, which bluntly is not good. And here to help me do that today is Patricia Traina of Giants Country and Locked On Giants. Patty, how are you? How are things? How's everything in your neck of the woods these days?
I'm short on sleep. I'm in disbelief. And man, I still can't believe it. I just can't.
And that's the place to start. All right. The Giants are 1-3. We know Monday night was really a must-win game against the team that was not nearly they're not nearly as much better than the Giants than they actually looked on Monday night. We knew that the Giants had to win that game. It's been and it's not even the 1-3 record, Patty. It's I think you'll agree with this, but it's how awful they've looked in compiling it. It's the fact that they're getting blown out week after week. They look discombobulated. They look disinterested. They look confused. They look undisciplined. And they look incapable of getting anything done on offense. And I just didn't see anything remotely like this level of ineptitude coming. I don't know. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the first four games?
Yeah, I didn't see this coming either. I was very optimistic. I said, oh, they upgraded, the receiving core, tight end. You figured the offensive line was upgraded or was going to be better than it was last year. The defense, they, upgraded the defensive backfield, the secondary, the run defense depth. You said on paper, this team looked good. This team looked like potentially a 10-win team. And, along the way, you can go back and you can retrace what the coaching staff did. You can retrace some of the injuries and whatnot. And this team has just lost its way. And you look at this team, Joe Shane said coming out of training camp, it would take a few weeks before we knew what kind of team this was. We still don't know what kind of team it is because they don't know what they want to be. Their
No,
identity.
we know what
Their
kind of
identity.
team it is, Patty. It's a bad team.
Well, I was going to say that you beat me to the punch. It's a bad team that doesn't have an identity. They, I don't think they know what they want to be,
I
and it's like it's weird.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Patty. And where I really want to start today is with the idea of how the Giants approached the offseason, what they thought they were versus maybe what they really are. And I think that one of the things that any person, any company, any organization has to do is they have to honestly and without emotion self-evaluate what they are and what they are not. In retrospect, we all looked at the roster and we loved the addition of Darren Waller. We love the addition of Bobby Okereke. Thought the moves up in the draft, which cost them draft capital for Deonte Banks and Jalen Hyatt, were good moves. We like most of the things that they did in the offseason. I think you and I both agreed with bringing back Daniel Jones. And yet, when you think about it, they were 9-7-1 a year ago, won a playoff game, got blown out at the end by the Eagles. Did they get fooled in your mind? Did they get fooled into thinking that they were a playoff team, that last year was the floor, that their core was established, and that they didn't have a real rebuilding process to still go through? Because you can argue that what they acted like was a playoff team, that thought they were a playoff team, that thought they were moving into being a true contender, a team that was ready to step up toward the elite, in the NFC. And I think we're seeing that they're absolutely not that at this point. Do you think that perhaps in their own minds they thought maybe they were something that they're not?
It's possible. I think, it kind of reminds me of when I was, I'll tell you a real quick story because this is what it reminds me of. I went to a restaurant once with my husband and we found a $50 bill on the floor underneath our table. So now when we go back to the restaurant, we're constantly looking for that $50 bill on the floor. And of course, it's not going to be there. It was a one time thing. And I just think with the Giants, I I hate to use the word luck, but, they kind of caught a lot of people off guard, I think, last year because new coaching staff, new players, nobody really had film on them. Nobody really knew what they were going to be. And they were kind of feeling themselves out, if you will, as they went along. And they were able to take a few teams by surprise. So now you get to year two, they really didn't have a rebuild year like they should have had last year because they just had all this success. And now here we are, year two. You would think, okay, they build on what they did last year. Well, no, here's the rebuild year. This is what last year should have been like, and it got mixed up because they happened to find the $50 bill on the floor the one time, and they were hoping now to find it again this year.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's just, and we've seen it before. Actually, this kind of thing happened in Buffalo a few years ago, and Joe Shane and Brian Dable were part of that, where the first year of their rebuild, they were surprisingly successful, made the playoffs. Second year, they took a step back, had a losing record. And then since that time, they've been much better. The hard part to stomach here is I think expectations were raised, signing Daniel Jones the way that they did, which I still say they really had no choice considering the market and considering where they were in the draft. But I think expectations were raised so much by what they did and how they approached the offseason that I think all of that makes this that much more stunning to deal with at this point.
Yeah, I mean, expectations were sky high. I fell for it. You fell for it. A lot of people fell for it. We thought, okay, they upgraded, considering that that they had the 9-7-1 record last year, and they basically didn't have a fully stocked cupboard, if you will, and they stocked it up this year. So you think, okay, great. So last year's meatloaf is going to be better, or this year's meatloaf is going to be better than last year's, and that has not been the case. And no, I did not have meatloaf for dinner, if that's what you're wondering. Just that just popped into my head for some reason. But anyway,
Oh.
but yeah, the expectations were sky high, and it the crash landing hurts. It really hurts because you see the talent, but then you look at the whole picture, the injuries, the deployment of the personnel, how the coaching staff approach things, the execution on the field, and it's like, what are they doing?
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I want to ask you about is week one. All right. We know coming off a playoff season, feeling like they've upgraded the roster, they get absolutely not even punched in the mouth. They got mauled. And do you think there's anything to the theory that basically Dallas not only beat them, but sort of shocked them and sort of knocked the swagger out of the Giants, and maybe they haven't recovered from that yet. They're so shocked that they just haven't bounced back to what they're capable of being.
I think it's possible. I mean, when you go out there on a national stage and you get your lunch money taken from you in front of all those people, it's embarrassing. And sometimes, when we get embarrassed, it can take a while before we get the swagger back, So it is entirely possible that that's what happened. Now, that being said, this team needs to show toughness and resiliency. This is, what's the slogan that we see around the facility all the time? Smart, tough, and dependable. And, in sports, yeah, you're going to have your bad days at the office. Everybody, and in life, you're going to have your bad days in the office. And, how you respond speaks more about your character and your toughness and your mettle. And right now, if that is indeed true, if the Giants, they were so embarrassed that that it's like, oh my God, we can't show our face anymore, then that doesn't speak very highly of their mettle.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because Brian Dable says all the time it's a new year, every year's different, all those kinds of things. He said that a couple times today when we listened to him on our on his Zoom call on Tuesday morning. But it's just those things, resiliency, toughness, forcing other teams to make mistakes, basically playing clean games. Those are the kinds of things that were hallmarks of the 2022 Giants. And is it as stunning to you as it is to me to see the way that all of that has fallen apart with there are some new faces, but it's largely the same core. It's largely the same key players, and it's just stunning to see how it's fallen apart. And also the other thing to me that's stunning is this, by reputation, is a fantastic coaching staff, but I'm not sure what they're doing at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, your thoughts on just how stunning it is to see the difference from one year to the next.
Yeah, I don't think anybody knows exactly what this coaching staff is doing. I mean, I see things and I'm like, okay, why? Why does this make sense? The deployment of Paris Campbell, which I know you've talked about. Last night, having Darren Waller stay in to block as opposed to maybe putting Matt Peart out there when that's, you need Waller in your passing game. And we can go on and on with questionable decisions made by this coaching staff. We can go back to the summer and the preseason. You and I have talked about only playing the starters for one quarter, or not even a quarter, I'm sorry, one series, and determining, okay, we're good to go. We're ready to go. I mean, I didn't like that move. I know you didn't like it either. So
and the deployment of the offensive line throughout the
the
summer as
offensive,
well.
exactly, the offensive line. I mean, you've got Joshua Zudu playing tackle when he didn't practice it all summer long. He basically didn't start practicing it until 10 days before the start of the season, after training camp was over. That makes sense. So, I mean, I guess if you look at all these questionable decisions that the coaching staff has made, maybe the fall off shouldn't be that surprising. Maybe it shouldn't be. I don't know. But yeah, is it disappointing? This was supposed to be, year 2, a continuation of what they started last year. And, when Dable says, oh, every year is a new year. Yeah, it is. But when your foundation transfers over from year to year and your system is the same, yes, you're plugging in new pieces, but this isn't like starting over again. And oh, by the way, if that's your philosophy, then why didn't you play your starters more in the preseason if that's your philosophy? So I question how much they really believe that each year's a new year.
No, it's interesting, Patty, because I think you could have seen some regression coming, at least regression in terms of record, simply based on the schedule that they were handed. 4 road games in the first 5 weeks, games in the first 5 weeks against Dallas, San Francisco, or in the first 6 weeks, Dallas, San Francisco, Miami, and Buffalo. They have another 3-game road trip, I think weeks 11 through 13 or something like that. But you could have seen some regression record-wise coming, but I don't think that anyone counted on regression in terms of the way they played, in terms of the caliber of their play. as you said, because it's year two, it's the same core that you felt like you supplemented. So it's disturbing.
It's very disturbing. Progress is never linear in sports, and especially in the NFL. But this team, they're, I don't know, what do they call that? A Gantt chart, or the line chart is going the down. It's not even going up, 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 like this. It's going, it's dropping faster than the stock market.
Mhm.
And that's, to me, disturbing because, look, the roster is what it is. People say, oh, they should go out and sign this guy. They should sign this guy. It's not going to happen. Also, hey, take a look at the salary cap situation they have. They got to use that money to get through the rest of the year. All right. So the cavalry's not coming, guys. I wish it were, but it's not. So it's basically up to the people in that building to get a solution in place and implement it. I don't know if they can do that. I mean, my confidence has taken a dent. I certainly hope so because Ed, last night was not fun. All right. It was very hard to sit through. You and I can both agree. I mean, we sat next to each other in the press box. We were talking about it all night. And if it was hard for us, I can just imagine what it's like for the paying customers who had to sit there and watch that and have their hearts smashed. Those are the people
Well,
I feel for.
at least the paying customers had the option, which many of them took, Patty,
To
about
leave.
yeah, after that pick six, a great majority of them packed up and went home.
Yeah,
At
you and I
least
didn't.
at least they had that option.
Yeah.
You and I did not,
Yeah.
but that's neither here nor there. One thing I want to talk about, Patty, we have to talk about Daniel Jones a little bit. And look, I think you and I both supported the idea of bringing Daniel Jones back. I don't think the Giants had much of a choice. They weren't high enough up in the draft to get one of the premier quarterbacks. It wasn't looked at as a great quarterback class anyway. They weren't going to basically mortgage a draft to go up and do that. There really wasn't a veteran free agent that looked like a clear upgrade from Daniel Jones. And honestly, what the Giants paid Daniel Jones for wasn't necessarily what he did last year. It was what they thought last year showed them he could do going forward. And I don't have a problem with that with that signing. I don't have a problem with the contract. It's a 2-year deal they can get out of after next year. So I think they did okay there, but I think you'll agree with me when we watched Daniel Jones last night. Daniel Jones looked like rookie year and second year Daniel Jones. He looked like the quarterback who had forgotten how to protect the ball when he tried to get out of the pocket. He looked jittery. He looked like the guy who was turnover prone and really wasn't confident in anything he was doing. And honestly, I don't think any quarterback was going to make the Giants offense look tremendous, but he didn't look functional. And I think to me, it's an accumulation of what has gone on here week after week after week. Everybody's a human being. And sooner or later, when you get hit, almost every time you go back to drop to throw a pass, when you have to get out of the pocket, almost every time when you're running for your life, I think sooner or later that gets into your head and it has to impact your performance. And I think we're seeing regression, and I think there's a reason for it.
Yeah, I mean, look, there were times last night when Daniel had a clean pocket and just automatically he rolled out of it,
Mhm.
and he missed, there was one play in particular. I think I saw a clip on that on the All 22 where Wandale Robinson was wide open and was basically waving his hands. Hey, I'm open. I'm open. Daniel never saw him. There was also, you watch Daniel Jones and you question, okay, is he just looking to get the ball out quick? So therefore he's only looking to where the sticks are? Or is he really scanning the entire field? Right now, his internal clock is so off. And it's not his fault. Look, if you were getting bounced around like a pinball, your internal clock would be off as well. But you talk about smart, tough, dependable. And I don't want to question Daniel Jones's toughness. I understand, he was dealing with some adversity with the offensive line and whatnot. I get that. But you think back to, and you were around this, Sarah, so you're going to know what I'm talking about. When Phil Simms was the quarterback of this team, do you remember what happened when Phil Simms got knocked around? What did he do? He bounced up and he would beat his chest and he'd say, "Is that the best you got? Come at me again." And he was just tough like that. And, he didn't necessarily retreat into a shell. Eli Manning was like that, right? I don't want to say that Daniel Jones isn't tough. He is tough. We've seen him, run and take hits and everything like that. But there's physical tough, and then there's that other toughness. And you can kind of see it in his game, where maybe subconsciously he's just trying to protect himself, trying to live to see the next play. Or in some cases, he's just trying to make the play on his own, which he can't do.
And I think, Patty, I think that issue kind of goes beyond Daniel Jones. It sort of permeates the roster because it feels like, what you're looking for. You're not looking for guys to jump up and cause fights and do stupid stuff after the whistle and get in those scrums. You're looking for guys to show toughness in their play. You're looking for some resilience. You're looking for, oh, crud. We've played badly for 2.5 quarters, but we're still in this game. Let's finish this drive, and get within 4 points. Or we got behind 16-0. Let's make a game of it instead of let it turn into 26-0 and then 40-0. And that's what we're not seeing. And that goes beyond Daniel Jones. That seems to go through the whole roster. Who's the guy who picks this team up by the bootstraps and starts to demand better from his teammates?
Exactly.
And that's Justin Tuck was that for the Giants for a while. Michael
Dontrell
Strahan
Roll.
used to be that. Antrell Roll used to be that.
Antonio Pierce.
Antonio Pierce was that. And right now, I don't see a player who wants to be that. I think Dexter Lawrence talked about it last night, but I haven't seen Dexter Lawrence actually
Do it.
be that person yet. He talked about it. I think he knows he needs to be that guy. I honestly think he and Andrew Thomas need to be those people, but I don't know that it's in their personalities.
Yeah. And you're right. They're missing a legitimate dog. I mean, could Kayvon Thibodeau be that guy?
If he was
Perhaps.
playing better, and if
If he
he
was playing
could,
better.
and if he
Yeah.
could get out of his own mind, sometimes he might be. But I don't think
Yeah.
he's got the gravitas in that locker room yet to be
Right.
that guy.
Right. So, okay. Leonard Williams, he hasn't been playing, well. Who else could you look to? It's funny. Somebody asked me if the Giants just have too many nice guys on the roster. And I thought about that, and I said, okay, every guy I've ever dealt with in that locker room has been nice. They've been professional, polite, and so forth. And I go back to 2007, AP, Antonio Pierce, sometimes he would be a wiseacre. Same with Antrell Roll in 2011. You would have guys. Michael Strahan was notorious for mixing it up verbally with the media. And you saw in their personalities, it's like, okay, if you're seeing this and you're dealing with them, that's how they were in the locker room too, based on what teammates would say. And you look at this team, this current Giants team, and I don't know that they have that guy. I mean, Thibodeau would be the closest, but like you said, he hasn't earned those stripes yet. Saquon is dealing with an injury. So he's taking care of his shop. Thomas is dealing with an injury. Dexter could be that guy, but Dexter sometimes just comes across as a, as a happy-go-lucky type, and I don't know, does he have that in him?
It's interesting, Patty. When I was in the locker room last night, we were talking to Dex, and he talked about, I'm not afraid to hurt people's feelings if that's what it takes to win. He talked about, holding guys accountable, but I'm just not sure that it's there I'm not sure it's in his personality to really step out and do that. But what I wanted to ask about, Dex was talking about hurting people's feelings. Xavier McKinney and Adoree Jackson talked about, having been through it with teams where things had gone south. And we've seen it go south with the Giants too many times. And I don't know about you, Patty, but I've been around the players enough, and I know you've been around them quite a bit as well. I just have this feeling that there's some discord or some unhappiness at some level, and I can't quite tell if it's player to coach in terms of, as we've talked about, some of the ways that certain players are being used, or schemes that are being run, or whatever it might be, or if it's player to player, or if it's both. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it feels like within that dynamic, there's something that's not right, and it leads me to wonder if there's real potential for this to really go south and blow up, which I would not have expected, the way that Brian Daboll handled this team a year ago, and the way that he relationship builds so much better than Ben McAdoo did, or Pat Shurmur did, or Joe Judge did. I wouldn't have ever expected to even be thinking about this topic.
Yeah, but it's a very real topic, and you're right. I get that impression too. I'm not so sure it's player to player. I almost get the impression it's player to coach. Based on
Mhm.
some of the comments last night that came out of the locker room, you could tell there was frustration. Darren Waller was clearly frustrated by how he was deployed. And, look, one of the things last year, I don't know if you probably remember this, but for those who don't, one of the things a lot of these players said, and even in the offseason, they said this, that they liked about this coaching staff was that it was a democracy in the locker room, meaning that the players, the coaches would go to the players and ask them for their input on stuff. What do you like to run? What don't you like? What's your thoughts here? And I don't know if that still exists because, here we are. The team is 1-3. They're having trouble getting out of their own way. Have the coaches reined everything in and said, okay, you know what? We're going to figure this out because we got too many cooks in the kitchen. I don't know, but you do sense amongst some guys that there's some frustration with how they're deployed.
It's
And,
interesting. No,
you know,
sorry. Go ahead
I
and
don't
finish,
know if,
Patty. I'm sorry.
I don't know if that's going to result in the locker room splintering. I don't think it will, but certainly something to keep an eye on.
And as I said, it's interesting because none of that existed a year ago.
Right.
And I don't want to say who it was last night, but there was a player last night in the locker room, asked about a coach, or asked about a scheme, or asked, what role the particular coach was playing in the struggles that were going on. And the answer was dead silence for about 10 seconds, which tells you there's something there. There's some level of unhappiness there. As you said, um, Darren Waller was unhappy with not only the fact that he was open on that on the pick six, but with the fact that he's probably stuck so much in line. And last night, what were you going to do? Because Daniel Bellinger got hurt, and but that was always I said it going way back to the summer when I was doing 53-man roster projections. That was always the danger of carrying one inline blocking tight end on this roster.
So you put the jumbo guy in there. I
You
mean,
know,
you could have played Matt Parrott as your jumbo tight end.
the
I mean,
yeah,
granted, it would have
that
given it away, but, you know,
sure, except for the fact that I think from the fact that the Giants have used Josh Azudu as their left tackle for 3 games in a row tells you that the Giants don't wanna play Matt Parrott. It's like they don't wanna play Mark Glowinski despite the fact that he's better than Shane Lemieux. They don't wanna play Glowinski. They've moved on, and I don't get it because he's better than Shane Lemieux, even if it
I
is at left guard.
I was surprised. I
And
was surprised
and
when I saw that.
but I do think there have been a few instances where I think players have, just from their tone or just from how they've answered the question or how long it's taken them to answer the question. I mean, I can remember even going back to the summer and talking to some of the guys about the the offensive line rotation. And I'd have guys who were involved in it say to me, "I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I really don't know what's going on. I don't know why we're doing this. I don't know what's going on." But so I do think there's some confusion and some tension, I guess, some discord.
Not on the
And
same page, and that's dangerous.
absolutely it is. Patty, I think that where we should end up though is, do you have any optimism that this gets better?
I'm a naturally optimistic person. I give people at teams long leashes, probably longer than I should. So I'd like to think that Dable, and I still, think Dable and the coaching staff, for the most part, is a solid group. They suddenly didn't forget how to coach, I don't think. So I'd like to think that they will get it straightened out. I need a sign though. I
Mhm.
right now I have not had a sign that there's potential. You could say, "Oh, what about the 2 quarters against the Cardinals? That was a sign." Yeah, well, they went right back to what they were doing the week before, and it hasn't gotten any better. So, right now, Ed, I need a sign before I can say, "Yes, this is gonna turn around," and we're 4 weeks into the season now, 2 decent quarters of football. That's not enough for me. So, I'd like to think that it'll get better, but I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm confident that that'll happen.
I hear you, Patty. 2 decent quarters of offense and 1 decent quarter of defense out of 16 quarters of football is just not gonna cut it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Giants fans, thank you as always for listening. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.